The heavy glass doors of Strathmore and Pierce side closed behind her, sealing Eliza Monroe inside a world that had never been built for her. The lobby stretched out like a polished fortress, endless marble floors reflecting the cold gleam of chandeliers, towering pillars framing walls lined with art priced higher than most homes. Every surface whispered of power, of wealth, of belonging, and every glance cast her way declared she did not. Eliza moved with quiet purpose, her white blouse starched but simple, her black pencil skirt modest, her flats worn thin from countless miles walked without complaint. She carried no designer bag, no gleaming badge of status, only a battered leather satchel, heavy with contracts she had labored over far from these polished halls. The receptionist barely looked up, her manicured nails tapping a rhythm of dismissal. A security guard's gaze trailed her suspiciously, lips pressed into a thin line. Upstairs, past the glass elevators and sleek chrome finishes, the senior partners of Strathmore and Pierce gathered in their boardroom, titans in tailored suits, their laughter low and sharp, trading ideas and insults with equal ease. Eliza's task was clear: deliver the documents, exit quietly, leave no ripple. She approached the frosted glass doors, heart steady but heavy. She had almost made it when the blow landed. Sweetheart, restrooms to the left, billion-dollar boardrooms to the right. Don't get lost. Victor Hargrove, senior partner, predator of weaknesses, crowned king by cruelty. Laughter ignited around the room, polite but poisonous. Another partner waved toward the door without looking. Security, please. Let's not have catering staff wandering into strategy sessions. Eliza stood still. For one suspended moment, she met Victor's gaze across the vast, gleaming room. No anger, no tears, just a silence that was sharper than any retort. Then she turned, each step measured, her scuffed shoes whispering across the marble as the laughter closed around her like a trap. They believed they had erased her with mockery. They believed she was no one. They were wrong. The woman they had just humiliated owned more than they could fathom, and soon the empire they ruled with cruelty would belong to her. The humiliation did not end at the boardroom doors. It followed Eliza Monroe like a cold mist, seeping into every corner of Strathmore and Pierce. In the break room, her presence caused conversations to halt, only to resume in mocking whispers once she turned her back. At the coffee station, an associate accidentally spilled creamer near her shoes, snickering with his friends. "Oops," he muttered, loud enough for others to hear. Thought she was the janitorial staff. Laughter buzzed around her like flies. Emails and private group chats bloomed with grainy snapshots of her plain clothes and battered satchel, accompanied by cruel captions. Delivery girl upgrades to marble floors, lost and found, dignity. Every hallway became a gauntlet, every elevator a silent trial. In meetings, the few times she was allowed to observe, partners spoke over her, around her, as if she were an invisible wraith haunting their empire of glass and marble. But Eliza said nothing. Every insult, every snicker, every dismissive glance, she tucked them away, brick by brick, building an unshakable foundation within herself. They believed she would crumble. Instead, she solidified. Invisible, yes, but not powerless. Not anymore. The quarterly town hall was meant to be a showcase of power, dazzling presentations, carefully curated victories, controlled narratives. Instead, it became a stage for cruelty. The grand auditorium gleamed under harsh chandeliers. Rows of Strathmore's elite filled the velvet seats, buzzing with anticipation. Eliza moved along the aisles, distributing agendas, her every step observed, judged, ridiculed. Victor Hargrove spotted her first. He seized the microphone, voice dripping with manufactured charm. Catering's finest joins us again. Maybe she brought snacks this time. The crowd erupted in laughter. A few interns took out their phones, capturing her discomfort for private jokes later. As she passed, a senior partner theatrically sniffed the air and said, "Smells like ambition," and "cheap detergent." More laughter, crueler now. Eliza kept her movement steady, her face unreadable. Her silence wasn't submission. It was strategy. Victor swaggered to the edge of the stage as she approached, holding out his hand for an agenda like a king demanding tribute. She placed the document calmly in his palm, meeting his eyes without flinching. For a moment, just a heartbeat, Victor faltered. Then he sneered and turned back to the audience. See, folks? Even delivery girls get their 5 seconds of fame at Strathmore and Pierce. The auditorium roared with laughter again, a tidal wave crashing over her. Eliza slipped away quietly, the fire in her chest banked but burning brighter. They thought this was the climax of her humiliation. They hadn't seen anything yet. After the town hall, the office transformed into a theater of whispered jokes and hidden smirks. In the break room, 2 analysts leaned against the counter, chuckling over grainy photos of Eliza on their phones. I swear, one said, I thought she was a janitor at first. Maybe she's an undercover boss. The other mocked, laughter dripping with disdain. In the elevators, people shifted to the far side when Eliza stepped in, their conversations falling to murmurs. Some refused to meet her gaze. Others offered patronizing smiles, the kind you gave to someone you found pitiable. At her desk, tucked away in a forgotten corner, Eliza methodically processed paperwork. She answered emails. She filed reports. Each keystroke, each stapled page, each polite nod was another stone in the fortress she was building. One afternoon in the cafeteria, a group of junior partners gathered near her table, laughing louder than necessary. Someone should tell her. A woman in designer heels snickered. There's a dress code for the cafeteria, too. Maybe she's hoping Victor will give her a gold star for trying. Another chimed in. The laughter stung sharper because it was so casual, so effortless. Eliza folded her napkin carefully, placed it on her tray, and left without a word. But inside her, the quiet fire grew hotter. They thought she was nothing. They were wrong. Each slight was a chisel, each insult a hammer. And Eliza Munro was becoming something they could neither predict nor survive. The rain started around noon, thin needles tapping against the towering glass windows. It was the kind of gray, heavy day that seeped into bone and mood alike. Eliza worked silently at her desk, processing endless data reports when the first ripple passed through the office. Phones buzzed. Laptops pinged. Across the vast expanse of cubicles and glass offices, heads lifted, eyes widened. An encrypted email had arrived. Urgent, mandatory shareholder meeting, 6:00 p.m. today, attendance required. Confusion murmured through the building. Meetings were canceled, conference calls aborted. Executives whispered in tight knots near windows and elevators. Eliza watched quietly from her corner. Victor Hargrove swaggered past, laughing with false bravado. Probably some pencil pusher getting cold feet, he said. Nothing to worry about, but his laugh was brittle, and his knuckles were white around his coffee cup. Rumors flared. Hostile takeover? Insider scandal? Federal investigation? The firm was a pressure cooker, and the lid was rattling. Eliza filed her last document, slipped her battered satchel over one shoulder, and moved through the trembling hive of panic without urgency. She stepped into the service elevator, the one no partner would deign to use, and descended toward the lobby as the storm outside deepened. No one noticed her leave. No one stopped her, and by the time the clock struck 6:00 p.m., when every polished shoe and manicured hand clutched agendas and phones in the marble boardroom, Eliza would return, but not as the girl they thought they could ignore. Not anymore. The boardroom of Strathmore and Pierce was a cavern of tension. At the long mahogany table, the senior partners sat rigid, their faces pale under the unforgiving chandelier light. Suits were straightened. Coughs were muffled. Phones buzzed in pockets, but were ignored. Victor Hargrove lounged back in his chair, trying and failing to look unconcerned, drumming his fingers against the glossy wood. The CEO, Mr. Harrington, cleared his throat, a stack of papers trembling slightly in his hand. Ladies and gentlemen, he began, voice hoarse, we have significant developments to discuss. The double doors opened with a soft click. Every head turned. Graham Sterling entered first, the infamous investor whose silent takeovers were legendary in the industry. His tailored suit was impeccable, his expression unreadable. Behind him, stepping into the room with unhurried grace, came Eliza Monroe. Same plain, white blouse, same scuffed flats, same battered satchel, slung casually over her shoulder. The partners stared, confused. A few whispered. Victor's smirk twisted as if he were about to make another joke, until he caught the steely glint in Sterling's eye. Harrington's voice cracked as he announced, effective immediately, the majority shareholder of Strathmore and Pierce is Ms. Eliza Monroe. The silence was suffocating. Chairs creaked. Papers rustled. Mouths fell open. Victor shot up from his seat. "This is some kind of joke," he barked. "She's a temp." "A secretary." Eliza stepped forward, setting her battered satchel down with a quiet thud on the table. She opened it slowly, deliberately, pulling out a thick folder, signed legal documents, notarized contracts, irrefutable proof. Graham Sterling's deep, calm voice filled the room. "Ms. Monroe has held silent, controlling interest in Strathmore and Pierce for the last 60 days. Tonight, her full ownership is public." Victor's face turned a mottled shade of red. Eliza lifted her gaze, steady and cold. "You laughed at me," she said, her voice clear, slicing through the heavy air. "You built walls to keep people like me out. Tonight, those walls fall. No theatrics. No raised voice. Just the truth, spoken simply, leaving nowhere to run." The senior partners, once kings of this glass castle, sat motionless, their power evaporating with each second that passed. Eliza's hands remained steady on the folder as she flipped open the first page. Effective immediately, a full audit of all partner activities will commence. Promotions will be frozen, pending review. "And any breaches of ethics," she said, letting her gaze land squarely on Victor, "will be met with immediate expulsion." A few partners fidgeted. One woman reached shakily for her water glass. Victor opened his mouth, but no sound emerged. Eliza Monroe, the woman they had ignored, mocked, humiliated, now owned the keys to their kingdom, and she was just getting started. The aftermath was swift and merciless. Within 24 hours, Victor Hargrove was escorted from the premises. No fanfare, no golden handshake, just a security guard waiting by his office door and a curt letter terminating his contract for cause. His protestations echoed uselessly down the glass corridors as employees watched in stunned silence. In the break room, someone quietly deleted the memes and group chats that had once mocked Eliza. At their desks, junior associates refreshed their inboxes anxiously, wondering if they were next. News spread like wildfire. Graham Sterling overseeing full financial audits. Eliza Monroe establishing a new Ethics and Merit Oversight Committee. Former untouchables suddenly finding their power evaporated. Pauline, a partner who once sneered at Eliza over coffee, was forced to resign when discrepancies in billing practices came to light. Marcus, who had openly called Eliza the mail girl in meetings, saw his pet projects frozen and his team reassigned. The firm itself shifted on its axis. The false idols were falling, one by one. Victor's final act was a pitiful attempt to rally support, sending a fiery email denouncing the absurdity of this leadership coup. It was flagged for misconduct and deleted. By week's end, Victor Hargrove, once the self-proclaimed king of Strathmore and Pierce, was nothing but a cautionary tale, whispered about over coffee and wine. Meanwhile, Eliza moved through the building like a quiet force of nature. She spoke little. She issued no grand proclamations, but her presence changed everything. Where once fear had governed, respect began to grow, and those who had once mocked the girl in the scuffed flats now scrambled to prove their worth in a world she was remaking, one deliberate step at a time. Weeks rolled into months, and the skeleton of the old Strathmore and Pierce was carefully dismantled. In its place, Eliza Monroe and her newly appointed leadership team began to build something different, something stronger. Gone were the days when pedigree mattered more than potential. Gone were the unspoken rules about who could speak in meetings and who was meant to stay silent. In their place came new policies, radical in their simplicity, open-door leadership at every level, anonymous suggestion platforms reviewed weekly, and acted upon mentorship programs pairing junior staff with executives based not on social standing, but on shared visions. One Monday morning, the firm gathered in the grand atrium for a town hall unlike any before. No polished scripts, no meaningless buzzwords, just Eliza Monroe, standing quietly at the center, her voice steady but warm. "I am not here to rule over you. I'm here to build with you." Her words rippled through the room, sinking into the marble, into the bones of a company reborn. The janitors, the paralegals, the assistants, all who had once been invisible, now stood shoulder to shoulder with partners and executives. In the weeks that followed, small miracles unfolded. A receptionist's idea for an eco-friendly office initiative was implemented firm-wide. A junior associate with no Ivy League degree was promoted to lead a high-profile litigation team. The once cynical break room buzzed with real conversations, not whispers of fear. Respect replaced mockery. Opportunity replaced nepotism. And across the city, the legend of Strathmore and Pierce's quiet revolution began to spread. But Eliza wasn't concerned with legends. She had work to do and a future to build. Not alone, but together, the world beyond Strathmore and Pierce began to notice. Business journals that once ignored Eliza Monroe now clamored for interviews. Podcasts dissected her leadership philosophy. Op-eds praised the quiet revolution she had sparked in one of the most cutthroat firms in the city. But Eliza declined most interviews. She preferred action to applause. Still, the impact rippled outward. Other firms scrambled to revise their own policies, afraid of falling behind a movement they barely understood. Young women pinned Eliza's quotes above their desks. "True power builds bridges, not walls." Business schools taught her case study under the title, "The Power of the Overlooked." LinkedIn was awash with posts from former Strathmore employees sharing stories of how one woman changed their lives, their careers, their hope. Meanwhile, inside the firm's walls, the transformation deepened. A janitor's suggestion for a scholarship program for employees' children was implemented within weeks. A paralegal's proposal for a new digital filing system saved the company millions. A former intern, once ignored, now led a diversity task force shaping real policy. Eliza walked the corridors, not as a queen, but as a quiet architect, building, strengthening, listening. And through it all, she remained unchanged. Still wearing simple blouses, still carrying her battered satchel, still moving with that unshakable calm. She had no need for crowns. She wore her power in her actions, her choices, her unwavering belief that dignity could rebuild even the most broken empires. And everywhere she went, a new generation watched and learned. On a cool autumn evening, Eliza Monroe stood alone on the rooftop terrace of Strathmore and Pierce. The city stretched before her, a sea of shimmering lights and endless possibility. In her hands, she held a small leather-bound notebook, worn, creased, filled with the dreams she once dared not speak aloud. She flipped through its pages, reading the notes she had written in darker times. Respect matters more than wealth. Kindness is not weakness. The unseen are not powerless. A soft breeze tugged at her hair, and she closed the notebook with a quiet smile. Inside the building, laughter drifted upward, the real kind, born of belonging, not fear. The company she had rebuilt was alive, thriving, beating with the pulse of a new generation. She thought of the people who now led teams once closed to them, the ideas once silenced, now shaping the future. She thought of every quiet soul who had ever been told they were too small, too plain, too invisible to matter. They mattered now, because she had dared to stay, dared to endure, dared to lead without shouting. Eliza turned her face to the wind and breathed deeply, feeling the steady thrum of the city and the quiet triumph in her bones. No headlines, no parades, just the deep, unshakable knowledge that she had won, not by becoming louder, but by becoming stronger. She slipped the notebook back into her battered satchel. Tomorrow, there would be more work, more bridges to build, more silent revolutions to ignite, and somewhere, in some forgotten corner of another marble tower, Another quiet soul would find her courage and know that she was not alone, because Eliza Monroe had walked before her and changed the world without ever raising her voice.